You ever hear a story that sounds so completely made up you have to check if it's true? Well, here's one for you. What if I told you that for a brief, bizarre moment in history, the company that makes Pepsi had its own navy? It sounds like a punchline, but it's not. This is the unbelievable but true story of the Pepsi Navy.
All right, let's kick things off with a little trivia. Think back to 1989. The Cold War is on its last legs. Now, who do you think had the sixth largest navy in the entire world? The British? The French? Nope. The answer was Pepsi. Yeah, you heard me right. How in the world that happened is one of the strangest tales in modern history.
So yeah, a soda company's navy. It doesn't sound right, does it? A company that's all about fizz and snacks having warships. So let's get into what this navy actually consisted of.
And this wasn't just a rowboat and a canoe. We're talking about a serious collection of hardware, at least on paper. Pepsi literally took ownership of 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer, all handed over from the Soviet Union to an American soft drink company.
Okay, so this is the big question, right? Why? It's not like they were planning to start delivering six-packs by submarine. The real reason is an amazing story about business, politics, and some really creative thinking that goes back decades, right into the thick of the Cold War.
To get to the bottom of this, we have to rewind the clock. The whole thing starts with what you could call soda diplomacy. See, back then, a simple can of soda wasn't just a drink, it was this powerful symbol of Western capitalism, especially behind the Iron Curtain.
It all kicked off in 1959. You've probably heard of the famous kitchen debate in Moscow between Richard Nixon and Nikita Khrushchev. Well, a very clever Pepsi executive named Donald Kendall saw his moment. He got a cup of Pepsi into the hands of a thirsty Khrushchev. The photo op was a massive win. Fast forward to 1972. Kendall is now the CEO of Pepsi, and he uses that connection to land an exclusive deal to sell Pepsi in the Soviet Union, completely locking out their biggest rival, Coca-Cola.
But, getting your product into a country is one thing. Figuring out how to actually get paid for it, well, that was a whole other problem. And this little economic hurdle is the key to this entire wild story.
So here's the fundamental issue. Pepsi saw this huge, untapped market of almost 300 million people, but they needed to be paid in dollars. The Soviets, however, could only pay in their currency, the ruble, and the Soviet ruble was basically monopoly money outside of the USSR. You couldn't take it to a bank and exchange it for dollars. It was a closed currency.
So what do you do when the local cash is no good? You stop thinking about cash, you start bartering. And this led to one of the most famous trades in business history, Pepsi for vodka. The solution they came up with was, frankly, brilliant. It was a straight-up product swap. Pepsi would ship their cola syrup concentrate to the USSR. In exchange, the Soviet Union gave Pepsi the exclusive rights to import and sell their famous Stolichnaya vodka in America. Pepsi gets a product it can sell for real dollars, and the Soviet people get to drink Pepsi. For a while there, it was a win-win.
But then, the real world came crashing in. In 1979, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. Right away, Americans started boycotting all kinds of Soviet products, and the big one was Stolichnaya vodka. Sales just cratered, and just like that, the whole deal fell apart, leaving Pepsi with a huge business in Russia and, once again, no way to get paid.
And this is where the story goes from unusual to truly unbelievable. This is how we get to the warships. With vodka no longer a valuable trade item, the Soviets had to find something else. And as their economy was crumbling in the late 80s, they were running out of things the West actually wanted.
Now, by 1989, Pepsi was looking to go even bigger. They were negotiating a new deal worth a mind-boggling $3 billion to open even more plants. The Soviets really wanted that deal to happen, but they had to come up with something massive to trade for it.
So, what's the one thing a collapsing superpower has way too much of? A giant, aging military. So, they made Pepsi an offer that no one saw coming. They offered to pay for all that cola syrup with a chunk of their obsolete navy.
The sheer scale of it is just wild. In one transaction, PepsiCo became the official owner of 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer. Oh, and they threw in some brand new oil tankers for good measure, which Pepsi could actually sell. It was a bizarre moment where a soda company momentarily had a navy.
But hold on. This is where we need to do a little reality check. Did Pepsi really have the ability to wage naval warfare?
Was there a Pepsi admiral? Well, not exactly.
The guys at Pepsi certainly had a sense of humor about the whole situation. Their CEO, Donald Kendall, famously joked to the U.S. National Security Advisor, "We're disarming the Soviet Union faster than you are." It's a great line, and it really gets to the heart of what was actually happening here.
So let's lay it out. Claim versus reality. The claim? Pepsi had the world's sixth largest navy. The reality? Well, maybe if you're just counting hulls, but these ships were basically floating junk. They were demilitarized, rusting, and totally useless for combat. Pepsi never, ever planned on using them as a navy. Their plan was much simpler and much more practical. As soon as the deal was done, Pepsi turned around and sold the entire fleet to a scrap metal company in Norway. Those warships were destined to be torn apart and recycled. For Pepsi, the ships weren't weapons, they were just a very, very weird way to turn their soda syrup into cold, hard cash. So, what's the takeaway from all this? In the end, the Pepsi Navy was never a real military force. It was really just a giant floating currency exchange. It's such a perfect, surreal snapshot of the last days of the Cold War, a time when a global superpower was so broke and so desperate for a taste of Western consumer goods, it was willing to trade its warships for soda pop. It just goes to show you, sometimes history is way stranger than fiction.
Hey, if you thought this story was as wild as I did, you should definitely check out our Unusual History Events playlist. We've got a bunch more just like this one. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and be sure to subscribe to Notebook Summaries so you don't miss what's next.